Hello everybody. I thought I would share my 1977 diary with you again, and this is the final part of January 1977, and I'm trying something different today. I'm using a system I used many years ago, and for just cue words, and hope that when I read these words it will bring back all the information I want to convey. Anyway, back in January 1977 there was 9 inches of snow, and it was the worst snow for 20 years. And of course we've had snow this month, and we've had about 4 inches, I should say, of snow, and it lasted what, 4 or 5 days on the ground before it thawed, and so therefore I have no recognition to say if it was worse then than it is today. But I think I can assume that due to global warming, that it was worse then than it has been in 2021. Well, back in 1977 I started night class. I was a late student for reasons which I may speak about at a further time on these videos, but for now I'd like to say that I worked from, I don't know, about 8:30 in the morning until about 5 at night, and I worked 7 days a week at that time. But when we got finished on Saturday and Sunday we came home, and that was the agreement, as long as we went every day. So if we got around quick on Saturday and Sunday, we had most of the day to ourselves. And sometimes we went around pumping stations for water and sewage, and we maintained these pumping stations. And sometimes when our partners were assistants, that is, were on holiday, we went around these stations on our own, but we only went to pumping stations that was safe to go. I mean, some of the places we went to, you went down a well 40 feet deep, and so obviously 2 people had to go down those, and then there was others that were no wells at all, and there were motors that you had to service to make sure they didn't stop. Once they stopped, there would have been no water to drink in the taps, and there would have been no sewage flying away. So it was one of those jobs where we had to go choose what. Anyway, while I was working them sort of hours, because I'd come out of the factories then to get off shift so I could study, I went to night classes. And the first teacher that taught me at night class I met again 40 years later, well, just a few years ago, and she had become one of the local mayors. And I introduced myself, and after a while she remembered teaching me, and while she was doing MA duties for 12 months. We met several times afterwards, and by that time I was in, because I've been in a Youth Relay local choir for about 10 more years actually. While this lady, this teacher, ex-teacher of mine, was doing her duties, we sang as a choir for on 2 or 3 occasions, and when she went to these venues, she used to make it in her way to come and have a chat, and I thought that was very nice, didn't you, meeting after all those years. And so I think we raised money for some of her causes. Anyway, as you know, today we're in lockdown and there's hardly anybody to see. We're still keeping our distance. We have to wear masks, as you know, and the only place my wife and I can go is to the local supermarket, and that is our life at the moment. So we're doing different things, filling our time in. I'm trying to learn all about editing, and I'm sure that when I've finished I will be proficient, because I like to do that sort of thing. I became a technician in my local college, and I loved working from a cockpit of buttons and dials and sorting things out like that, and I still do today. So if I can do something and make it better, work better for me and better for the people who are watching my videos, then I will be much happier. So far I've only managed to get a couple of templates. One is to start the video and one is to end the video, but the editing process has been cutting time-wise, been cut in half. It takes me half as long now to do the edits that I have to do, but I still make lots of mistakes, and you'll have to bear with me, but they will get better. I mean, this video I'm making at the moment, and this is the second attempt, and I am working from notes. The first attempt, and it's not unusual for me, I forgot to turn the speaker on. Anyway, enough of that. So I've mentioned that we can't see anybody or we can't go out, but back in the day, in 1977, it was a Saturday evening, and it was on the 22nd, so back end of this month, I decided to go to the local pub. We had lots of pubs open at that time, and clubs, but when I went to the first two, which I'll mention in a moment, there was hardly anybody in. I couldn't understand it. So then I went to the local working men's clubs, which you have to sign in, of course, and be members of. There was hardly anybody in there either, so I came home early. Now today, two of the pubs in Royston where everybody used to go at that time, one was called the Ring of Bells and the other was called the Pack Horse. The Pack Horse, it was a place where sheep and geese passed when they were going to market, and if I can remember I'll speak more about that later. But the Pack Horse and the Ring of Bells now, they're really eateries, they're not pubs as such. And one of the pubs we used to frequent, my wife and I, was called the Railway Hotel Inn, and at the other side of the village to where I live, and now that's no longer standing, and it has houses on where it used to be. But at that time, there was a landlord and landlady. They were wonderful people who created an atmosphere that was very nice, hence the reason we went. So back then there was a TV program called That's Life, and the That's Life program was introduced and by someone called Esther Ransom. Now it became more of a funny show rather than a show where it tried to do good for everybody, but it got lots of things done, and one of the things that Esther managed to get done was to meet with business people and manufacturers and get the old packaging scheme for foodstuffs in particular resorted out. If you bought a package and there was food in it, back in '77, you had older people, particularly people with arthritis, and amazing difficult problems to get this packaging open. So Esther ran a campaign, and thankfully to Esther, the packaging you see today is all down to her really. So it's much more easy to open, and I must thank her for all the things that she did. As I make this video, Esther is I think she's run some kind of a charity, and she's still working very hard. Now at that time, in '77, we had our local council officers, and they were based, council workers were based at a place called the Grove. Now the Grove is a very famous place, and hopefully I can speak to you about that also, because as a local resident, my friends and I, we made up lots of campaigns to try and improve the village, and this particular building, which was used by the council at that time, was called the Grove. And I actually wrote a book about a friend of mine whose father used to be the head gardener at the Grove, but I'll speak about all that later. But the council officers were in the Grove, and there were people from the council who you could go to approach and speak to, and you could pay your rates and your rent at that time, and if you had any problems you could discuss it with someone. And also I was able to go along and put my name down for to try and rent an allotment. Now allotments at that time, as is the case today, were few and far between. Once a person got the allotment, they tended to stay on it for a long time and grow their food. A dear friend of mine, actually, who's since passed away, had a wonderful allotment next to mine, and he taught me lots and lots of things, how to garden. Gardening on an allotment is completely different to gardening at home, because you're creating a produce that you want to eat, and you want every little bit of your garden to be productive at the right time, and also not to be overproductive. But anyway, so before I put my name down to have an allotment, I had a look round, and they said there weren't any allotments available. So I looked and looked, and I noticed that lots of the allotments down on the sites that were looked after by the council had not been used for a long time. They were knee-high in grass, etc., etc. And I wondered if the council knew how many allotments they had at that moment in time. But anyway, eventually I did get my own allotment. Well, I've mentioned that I used to work on pumping stations, and I've also said that sometimes we had to go to these pumping stations on our own. And one day, it was the Thursday the 27th of January 1977, I set off to go to a pumping station out in the backwoods, actually, on the fringes of nowhere. And thick icy fog came down, and you could hardly see your hand in front of your face, and the fog turned into black ice on the road. And the fog became so thick that I decided not to park up where I normally park to go to this particular pumping station. I parked up in a lay-by, and to do so I had quite a walk to get to the pumping station, and behind me I could hear cars banging into one another and people screaming, and I just couldn't get to them to help them. And excuse me a moment, the light seems to be fading. And so I was in a dilemma as to what to do next, and I couldn't do anything. So what I did, I went to the pumping station, I did what I've got to do, the servicing part of it, and when I came out the fog had lifted, but the black ice was still on the road. I couldn't walk on it. I was tripping up and falling backward and falling out on my bottom, etc. But when I saw what after the fog had cleared, the devastation in front of me, I was terrified. People had smashed into one another in cars, people were screaming, people were trying to get out of vehicles and couldn't. There was blood everywhere, and one lady who had gone into a lamppost, was slouched over the wheel, appeared to be dead. But for fearing that the car was going to burst into flames, I thought it best to try and get this lady out of the car. Of course, today you would have to put a neck brace on before you could do anything, and the cars don't explode like they used to do back then. But amazingly, because I couldn't get the lady out of the car, she was a dead weight, so to speak, two burly men came to my assistance, and these two gentlemen had London accents, and we got the lady out of the car, and I left this lady with them and realised that she wasn't dead after all. So I went back to my vehicle and I got onto my radio controlled units, which were about that big at that time, big things they were, with a microphone and speaker, before people had even thought about mobile phones. And I got onto the police and ambulances and my manager, and I called my road sign. I never forget the road sign call, Roads Fox 1 to Roads Fox 2 over. And doesn't it seem strange now to be hearing things like that? Anyway, we got the ambulances there and the police, and everything was sorted out, and the ambulance man pulled me to one side and he said, "Are you alright?" I said, "Yeah, of course I'm alright." But the truth was, I was in shock, and I could not put my foot on the accelerator or brake pedals without them trembling. So they made me stay there, the ambulance man, and they gave me a talking to until I was alright. So then I got onto my radio again when all the roads had been cleared and everyone was taken to hospital, and told the manager that I thought it was best that I go back into the office until I sorted things out with myself. And so what did they do? They gave me strong tea with lots of sugar in, and that's about all you could do at that time. Anyway, on the Sunday the 30th of January, my wife and I went to a presentation at the local Salvation Army Citadel. My wife and her family had always been involved with the Salvation Army, that is, until she married me, and then she no longer wanted to be involved. But our son was, and he enjoyed the Sunday school, and he went to a prize giving of his first book from there. Now I mention that really because today the Citadel is still there, it's still quite busy, but it's under a different guise. People used to go to the Salvation Army twice on a Sunday at that time, and they had a band. Falling numbers meant that the building, if it was to exist, had to take on a new lease of life. I don't think there's a band now, but they have all sorts of things like I don't know, babies clubs and married women's clubs and dieting clubs and keep fit clubs and all sorts of things like that. But the officer who's in charge, and sorry to say this, he and his wife and their child are all suffering with COVID at the moment, the virus, and I hope that they are better soon. And of course the Salvation Army Citadel is closed down, there's no one to run it. Now we have been told by letter that we can have our vaccine soon, for hopefully to make sure we don't get the COVID virus, but the only places available for us is either in the city of Wakefield or the city of Leeds. Now when I say that Leeds is about 20 miles away from where we live, and a very awkward place to get to even by car for us, because we live out in the countryside, then you will realise that we cannot really get there. As for Wakefield, which is about 10 miles away from where we live, it doesn't sound far, but once again it's very difficult when you live in a village to get transport to these places or even drive to these places, because one-way systems, etc., that you don't know your way around. So we are in a bit of a bind at the moment. We we have friends that have had the vaccine, and they've had, for some reason, they've been able to get their injections only a few miles away from where they live. How they've done that I don't know, but we clearly have not been given that choice. Now my only worry, I don't know if I've mentioned it in my other vlogs, is that because my family and I have been isolating, well, my wife and I have been isolating ourselves since last May 2020, we've not been in contact with friends, etc., or to any venues, or anything like that, then when I go for the injection, I will have to be in close proximity to someone who's giving the injection, obvious. But what what I'm concerned about is that person that's injecting me may have injected someone else before me and not washed their hands. Now you might say, oh come on, that can't happen. I hope it can't happen, but that is my particular worry. And I'm sure that I've nothing to worry about at all. But I just thought I'd inform you as to where we were now. So that video, which has taken about 20 minutes to produce, is taken me to the end of January 2021 and January 1977. And for people out there who like remembering about historical facts, I hope you enjoy this. Now when lockdown is over, I am hoping to be able to film outside. After all, the title of my vlogs is Vlogs of a Naturalist, and that is what I've been doing as a hobby for at least 50 years now. So there's lots of information I have out to pass on to other people, and I hope some of it is very entertaining. But I don't pretend to be anything other than an old man, and so some people might find these videos boring and some people might find them of interest. But either way, I hope that as time moves on, excuse me for rubbing my eye, it's itching, that the vlogs become more interesting to listen to and more interesting to look at when I create my overlays and edit better than I am today. So for now then, bye for now, and I hope that you too, wherever you are in the world, can get immunized against this terrible virus that's taken over all over the world, and that we are soon rid of it and can lead normal lives again. The one thing that I have come to terms with since lockdown is that how much I appreciated my freedom to be able to go out in the countryside and walk and enjoy life as I wanted to enjoy it. Putting all these constraints on people, such as being in lockdown, has created lots of tension in domestic situations. Mine, about a fortnight ago, I had a panic attack, and my body for about a week ached all over, and I felt dreadful, but thankfully I've got over that now, and I think it's just cabin fever that created that, where I just could not get out and have a good laugh with my friends and release some of the built-up tension that's been creeping up over nearly a year now. Anyway, enough of that. Let's look positive and hope that things will be back to normal soon. So bye for now.